Today is May 18th. Welcome to Big Book Daily. My name is Rob. I am an alcoholic. It's a thrill, honor, and joy to be here with you today as we journey through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. Today out of the Big Book, we're going to be reading How It Works, pages 67 and 68. And we're going to be finishing Personal Story, Acceptance Was the Answer, by reading pages 417 through 420. And out of the 12 and 12, we are going to begin Tradition number 4 by reading the first half of page 146. So with all that, my friends, hope you're doing well this morning. Life is good over here. Let's go ahead and get to the good stuff. All right, my friends. So if you recall from yesterday out of the core text, we were talking about step 4 quite a bit. We broke it down pretty practically, and we ended with the sick man's prayer, and which was when a person offended, we said to ourselves, "This is a sick man. How can I be helpful to him? God, save me from being angry. Thy will be done." So we're going to continue with that thought on pages 67 and 68. We avoid retaliation or argument. We wouldn't treat sick people that way. If we do, we destroy our chance of being helpful. We cannot be helpful to all people, but at least God will show us how to take a kindly and tolerant view of each and every one. Referring to our list again, putting out our minds to the wrong things that others have done, we resolutely looked for our own mistakes. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened? Though a situation had not been entirely our fault, we tried to disregard the other person involved entirely. Where were we to blame? The inventory was ours, not the other man's. When we saw our faults, we listed them. We placed them before us in black and white. We admitted our wrongs honestly and were willing to set these matters straight. Notice that the word fear is bracketed alongside the difficulties with Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, the employer, and the wife. This short word somehow touches about every aspect of our lives. It was an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it. It set in motion trains of circumstances which brought us misfortune we felt we didn't deserve. But did not we ourselves set the ball rolling? Sometimes we think fear ought to be classed with stealing. It seemed to cause more trouble. We reviewed our fears thoroughly. We put them on paper even though we had no resentment in connection with them. We asked ourselves why we had them. Wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? Self-reliance was good as far as it went, but it didn't go far enough. Some of us once had great self-confidence, but it didn't fully solve the fear problem, or any other. When it made us cocky, it was worse. Perhaps there is a better way. We think so, for we are now on a different basis, the basis of trusting and relying upon God. We trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. We are in the world to play a role that He assigns. Just to the extent that we do as we think He would have us, and humbly rely on Him, does He enable us to match calamity with serenity. We never apologize to anyone for depending upon our Creator. We can laugh at those who think that spirituality is the way of weakness. Paradoxically, it is the way of strength. The verdict of the ages is that faith means courage. All men of faith have courage. They trust their God. We never apologize for God. Instead, we let Him demonstrate through us what He can do. We ask Him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what He would have us be. And at once, we commence to outgrow fear. Now about sex. Many of us needed an overhauling there. But above all, we tried to be sensible on this question. It's so easy to get way off the track. Here we find human opinions running to extremes, absurd extremes perhaps. One set of voices cry that sex is lust of our lower nature, a base necessity of procreation. Then we have the voices who cry for sex and more sex, who bewail the institution of marriage, who think that most of the troubles of the race are traceable to sex causes. They think that we do not have enough of it, or that it isn't the right kind. They see its significance everywhere. One school would allow man no flavor for his fare, and the other would have us all on a straight pepper diet. We want to stay out of this controversy. We do not want to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct. We all have sex problems. We'd hardly be human if we didn't. What can we do about them? All right, so we're leaving you on a cliffhanger there, guys. We'll come back to this tomorrow. And if you recall from yesterday's reading in Acceptance Was the Answer, we have found that our friend here says something pretty profound. Really profound when he says, when I stopped living in the problem and began living in the answer, the problem went away. From that moment on, I have not had a single compulsion to drink. So he says a prayer here that, God, I am an alcoholic. It's taken a while in the story for him to admit that, but here we are. So we will go ahead and finish off this story today. Again, we're reading 4:17 through 4:20. And acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. When I am disturbed, it is because I find some person, place, thing, or situation, some fact in my life, unacceptable to me. And I can find no serenity until I accept that person, place, thing, or situation as being exactly the way it's supposed to be at this moment. Nothing, absolutely nothing, happens in God's world by mistake. Until I could accept my alcoholism, I could not stay sober. Unless I accept my life completely on life's terms, I cannot be happy. I need to concentrate not so much on what needs to be changed in the world as on what needs to be changed in me and in my attitudes. Shakespeare said, all the world's a stage and all the men and women are merely players. He forgot to mention that I was a chief critic. I was always able to see the flaw in every person, every situation. And I was always glad to point it out because I knew you wanted perfection, just as I did. AA and acceptance have taught me that there is a bit of good in the worst of us and a bit of bad in the best of us. That we are all children of God and we each have a right to be here. When I complain about me or about you, I'm complaining about God's handiwork. I am saying that I know better than God. For years, I was sure the worst thing that could happen to a nice guy like me would be that I would turn out to be an alcoholic. Today, I find it's the best thing that has ever happened to me. This proves that I don't know what's good for me. And if I don't know what's good for me, then I don't know what's good or bad for you or anyone else. So I'm better off if I don't give advice. Don't figure I know what's best, and just accept life on life's terms, as it is today, especially my own life, as it actually is. Before AA, I judged myself by my intentions, while the world was judging me by my actions. Acceptance has been the answer to my marital problems. It's as though AA had given me a new pair of glasses. Max and I have been married now for 35 years. Prior to our marriage, she was a shy, scrawny adolescent, and I was able to see things in her that others couldn't necessarily see. Things like beauty, charm, gaiety, a gift for being easy to talk to, a sense of humor, and many other fine qualities. It was as if I had, rather than a Midas touch which turned everything to gold, a magnifying mind that magnified whatever it focused on. Over the years, as I thought about Max, her good qualities grew and grew. And we married, and all these qualities became more and more apparent to me, and we were happier and happier. But then, as I drank more and more, the alcohol seemed to affect my vision. Instead of continuing to see what was good about my wife, I began to see her defects. The more I focused my mind on her defects, the more they grew and multiplied. Every defect I pointed out to her became greater and greater. Each time I told her that she was nothing, she receded a little more into nowhere. The more I drank, the more she wilted. Then one day in AA, I was told that I had the lenses in my glasses backwards. The courage to change in the Serenity Prayer meant not that I should change my marriage, but rather that I should change myself and learn to accept my spouse as she was. AA has given me a new pair of glasses. I can again focus on my wife's good qualities and watch them grow and grow and grow. I can do the same thing with an AA meeting. The more I focus my mind on its defects, late start, long drunkalogs, cigarette smoke, the worse the meeting becomes. But when I try to see what I can add to the meeting rather than what I can get out of it, and when I focus my mind on what's good about it rather than what's wrong with it, The meeting keeps getting better and better. When I focus on what's good today, I have a good day. And when I focus on what's bad, I have a bad day. If I focus on a problem, the problem increases. If I focus on the answer increases. Today, Max and I try to communicate what we feel rather than what we think. We used to argue about our differing ideas, but we can't argue about our feelings. I can tell her she ought not to think a certain way, but I certainly can't take away her right to feel however she does feel. When we deal in feelings, we tend to know ourselves and each other much better. It hasn't been easy to work out this relationship with Max. On the contrary, the hardest place to work this program has been in my own home, with my own children, and finally with Max. It seems that I should have learned to love my wife and my family first, the newcomer to AA last. But it was the other way around. Eventually, I had to redo each of the 12 steps specifically with Max in mind, from the first thing saying, I am powerless over alcohol, and my home life is unmanageable by me, to the 12th in which I tried to think of her as a sick Al-Anon and treat her with the love that I would give a sick AA newcomer. When I do this, we get along fine. Perhaps the best thing of all for me is to remember that my serenity is inversely proportional to my expectations. The higher my expectations of Max and other people are, the lower my serenity. I can watch my serenity level rise when I discard my expectations. But then my rights try to move in, and they too can force my serenity level down. I had to discard my rights as well as my expectations by asking myself, how important is it really? How important is it compared to my serenity, my emotional sobriety? And when I place more value on my serenity and sobriety than anything else, I can maintain them at a higher level, at least for the time being. Acceptance is the key to my relationship with God today. I never just sit and do nothing while waiting for Him to tell me what to do. Rather, I do whatever's in front of me to be done, and I leave the results up to Him. However it turns out, that's God's will for me. I must keep my magic magnifying mind on my acceptance and off my expectations. For my serenity is directly proportional to my level of acceptance. When I remember this, I can see that I've never had it so good. Thank God for AA. All right, some really good stuff here. Can't wait to come back to this in just a second. And finally, my friends, we are on tradition number 4, which is each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. We are going to read the first 2 paragraphs at page 146. Autonomy is a $10 word, but in relation to us, it means very simply that every AA group can manage its own affairs exactly as it pleases, except when AA as a whole is threatened. Comes now the same question raised in Tradition 1. Isn't such liberty foolishly dangerous? Over the years, every conceivable deviation from our 12 steps and traditions has been tried. That was sure to be, since we were so largely a band of ego-driven individualists. Children of chaos, we have defiantly played with every brand of fire, only to emerge unharmed and, we think, wiser. These very deviations created a vast process of trial and error which, under the grace of God, has brought us to where we stand today. Alright, so we will definitely learn more about Tradition 4 tomorrow. First of all, I guess I needed to hear this today. On page 68, I like this practical solution to fear. They must trust their God. We must never apologize for God. And I'm right here. Instead, we let Him demonstrate through us what He can do. We ask Him. So, 2 verbs right there for me. I need to let my God demonstrate Himself through us and what He can do. And then I need to ask Him to remove my fear and direct my attention to what He would have me be. And then in the next line, I'll just go ahead and replace the we to I. At once, I commence to outgrow fear. Ask Him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what He would have us be. If I focus on that fear will melt away. Good stuff. I needed to be reminded of that today. I'm very grateful. One thing I really gather from today's reading and the personal stories is expectations. So on 417, I accept that person, place, thing, or situation as being exactly the way it's supposed to be at this moment. Nothing, absolutely nothing happens in God's world by mistake. It says, until I could accept my alcoholism, I couldn't stay sober. Unless I accept my life completely on life's terms, I cannot be happy. I need to concentrate not so much on what needs to be changed in the world as on what needs to be changed in me and my attitudes. And he really kind of hammers that home toward the end here. Acceptance is the key to my relationship with God. And he really hammers that home on 420. Is remember that my serenity is inversely proportional to my expectations. The higher my expectations of Max and other people are, the lower my serenity. I can watch my serenity levels rise when I discard my expectations. Then my rights try to move in, and they can too force my serenity level down. I have to discard my rights as well as my expectations by asking myself, how important is it really? How important is this compared to my serenity and my emotional sobriety? And when I place more value on my serenity and sobriety than anything else, I can maintain them at a higher level, at least for the time being. And another thing he said was, if you look for the good, you're going to find it. So for me, it's all about perspective. And if I have low expectations of people, it almost sounds cynical in some ways. It's like, I can't expect anything from anybody. But at the same time, it saves you a lot of heartache and a lot of trouble because we can't control other people. As he says in the personal story, the only thing I can really control is my attitude and my perspective and my response. In my profession, I get a lot of criticism pretty much every day. And when I started off, I've been doing this for 14 years. When I first started, I used to take it so personal. And now, in sobriety, and it's a practice, don't get me wrong, I have to practice this every day. I don't take it as personal as I used to. I go, well, it's just people being people. They're not doing it to me, they're just doing it. So these things are definitely practical for me, and I'm very grateful that this was mentioned today. I guess I needed to be reminded of it. And I'm also very grateful that you're here. Thank you so much for listening. I don't speak on behalf of AA or NA or any other sect or anything like that. I'm just a friend in recovery, just a guy trying to figure things out. And I'm so grateful that you're here in this Lifeboat of Recovery with me today. If we are given another set of 24 hours, my friends, I look forward to seeing you back here tomorrow.